Hi, I'm Evan. I'll explain how millet flows through our elevator. So when farmers bring millet in from the field after they've harvested it, they'll come across our scale, we'll sample it and grade it. It'll then head to the elevator. It'll then pull into one of our receiving pits where it'll dump into a pit in the ground. We will then elevate it up and store it into one of these silos. When an order comes for us to clean millet, we will then pull out of the bottom of the silo, re-elevate it through a conveyor across the top into our millet cleaner. After it runs through the cleaner, it'll then come back to the bottom of the elevator. It'll be re-elevated and put back into a storage bin. There we will store the cleaned millet until an order comes in from a customer for it to be loaded onto a rail car. At that point, we will be able to pull the millet back out, elevate it into our rail loadout structure, and onto the rail car for export. Here's our electrical room. This was all updated. We were running 240 volt system before. We upgraded to 480. One is more electrically efficient. We use less electricity to run the whole process, but also it's easier to get parts. It's cheaper to get parts, so it keeps us in operation easier. So this is our electrical room. Here's our HAZ monitoring equipment in here. This is where the kind of all the sensors come and start reporting in, but this is where you can read it. So might be glare off of this. So here's our panel. We have sensors on all of our legs, conveyors, rub blocks, anything, bearings, motion, temperature, friction, plug switches, anything like that. So if there's any errors in this will set off an alarm and we can track down what's going on, try to figure out what's happening. So all kind of for safety and ease operations and such, but kind of make sure that our investment in equipment isn't damaged in some way. So here's one of our receiving areas. There's one there, one down here. Kind of just depending on the time of year, the crop, who's coming in, where we have space. We can dump farmers anywhere along here, and it'll go up and go into long-term storage. So you can see the white silos here. That's where we're gonna store it off the field. We won't clean coming in off the combine because we don't know what our customers want. Our customers may just want bin run millet, and so it doesn't pay to clean it ahead of time. So we store everything, as bin run or dirty millet, waiting until our customer tells us what they want. Obviously then if they order a load of cleaned millet, we can pull them out of our storage area and pull it up into our cleaner to get ready to clean it. We can show you that process. So here's one of the grain legs. This is how we convey equipment through a grain elevator. Grain elevators are gravity driven. Everything about them is we want to store it upright and then use gravity to reclaim it. But gravity only works one direction. So once the grain comes to the bottom and we need to put it someplace else, we use these conveyance tools here. Is this open? So I don't know if you can get in here with the camera and see this. Here's the flashlight. Here, I'll run my phone here. So here you can see these buckets. So this is referred to as a grain leg or a bucket elevator. So these buckets here are moving very fast. They're moving so fast you can't see them when it's actually running. But those will scoop up just a small amount of grain, carry it to the top of the facility, and then deposit it into the distributor, which can then go through another belt or down a downspout to flow somewhere. So that's how we keep moving this. Whether this is bin run, clean millet, we use legs to move this, move the millet throughout the facility. Here are some of the controls for the cleaner. There's controls right up at it, but it is sophisticated enough. We don't need somebody actually standing up there running the machine. We'd rather have people down here watching rail cars being loaded, receiving grain from farmers. So we do have the ability to control the cleaner down here, starting, stopping the flow of grain and such. Actual fine adjustments to the cleaner need to be done up there. And we can run up there next. Okay, so here we are on the cleaner floor. Here's some cleaner controls here. This is speed control, how fast the millet or grain flows into the cleaner, and then master gates to open and close and stop the machine itself. So what we have here is above this area here, there's 4 surge bins. And so those bins will hold a small amount of product before it feeds into the cleaner. And so we'll charge those bins coming out of the elevator, pull out of the large storage silos and store that in there. And that's to give us some surge capacity for the cleaner. That way the equipment that's feeding those bins doesn't have to be running nonstop. If we want to use it to move something else in the facility, we'll always have some product above the cleaner. It comes in, you can see a white hopper up there. It'll feed into what we call a feed hopper, and that's what we adjust the speed. And that controls how much millet is coming into the cleaner itself. The reason we want to do that is millet comes out of the field from our customer in different conditions. Sometimes it might have more trash or dirt in it. Sometimes it'll be cleaner. And so we'll adjust how fast we're running it into the machine depending on what condition it's coming in at. The cleaner is pretty simple. It feeds in. The first thing that's going to do is we have about a 40,000 CFM air system that's feeding this cleaner. The first thing we're going to do is run an airstream across the product to take out any light, fluffy material and just blow that right off and get it out of there so it doesn't even have to run through the cleaner or take its time to get through that. So we'll take that across at first. Then it will go to the cleaner, and what it does is we have 8 shaking decks in this cleaner. They're all identically set up. So the grain will be split 8 different directions, feed onto each deck. And what we have is 2 scalping screens that'll come across, 2 sifting screens that it comes across, and then a third scalping screen. So it runs a sift, scalp pattern through the cleaner. So the sift will take out anything that's smaller than the millet, running a 1/15th round on that. So dirt, dust, pigweed, palmer, amaranth seed, pigeon grass seed, anything that's smaller in millet will come off through those sifting screens. It'll then hit a scalping screen, which will take off anything larger. It might be corn, sunflower, stem, stalk, pieces of organic material. That'll come off and the millet will flow through and then come down. The final thing the millet does is comes to the back side of this right here, and there's another air screen. Another 10 to 13,000 CFM will hit that back just in case there's anything left, light particles that are maybe static is held to, and it'll pull that back off the cleaner. And then right through here, this is the clean millet, falls down to the spout below and then down to the grain leg, which we saw earlier, to be conveyed back up into the elevator. It can then go into a long-term storage bin, or we also have the ability here to put it directly onto a rail car off the cleaner. If you come around to this side of the cleaner, we can see some of the inspection ports that we have. So as I mentioned, there's those sifting screens and scalping screens. We can track what's coming down. So something we might do here, I'll show you, is if we wanted to see what's coming off, we can pull out these storage plugs and stick this in like this, and then we can grab samples, take a look at the millet, see how it's cleaning, see what's getting thrown over, coming out from under, and make adjustments to the machine. One of the most basic adjustments is what I showed earlier, it's just controlling the speed. Sometimes if we're getting too dirty millet comes through, it simply means we're pushing it too hard. We can slow it down some. But we also have these airflow things. So as you can see, we have pre-suction and after suction. Those are the different areas I mentioned earlier about where various light products are being pulled off by airflow. So we can make adjustments by that. If we see too many fines coming through, we can pull that back off. So these are things that we'll check simply just to kind of see how the machine is functioning. As long as the grain that's feeding into the cleaner is relatively homogeneous in nature, we seldom really have to make many adjustments to the machine. It performs pretty well. But every once in a while, you'll get to, when you're pulling out of a storage bin, when you get to the very last stuff that comes off, that's usually higher in trash. So that might be where we slow it down or put a little extra air to it. We can make those adjustments. But most of the time, the machine runs pretty well. So everything you see here is the cull product that's coming off. That falls down to a floor below us. It's then put into a pneumatic conveyance system and is conveyed up to the top of the elevator, dropped into our cull bin. That cull bin, once it gets full, we call a customer who comes and purchases that from us, and they'll use that to blend into different cattle feeds. And that's what the cull. So these are the 8-way dividers that control the way the grain will come down and hit each one of the decks. I'll take the camera here, if you'd like me to, and I'll stand up here and show the inside of those actual shaking screens. So there we can see the ribs where it flows down, and again, there's 2 sieves followed by a scalping screen further down inside the cleaner. And there's 8 identical of those up and down the length of the cleaner. Here are some screens. These are what you'll actually see in the machine. So this is what the millet, this is a scalping screen here, 8/64 round. So the millet, this one will fall through, but the stems and stalks, anything that's larger should come across this. And a question that we've received is, how come clean millet still has some dust in it? Well, most of the dust is removed from the cleaning process when the air comes across it, both in the beginning of the process and at the end. We have air curtains that clean off the dust. But the other thing with grain is an organic material. And organic materials break apart. So anytime you handle that millet, it runs the risk of breaking apart and creating some more fine dust. So, for example, when it leaves our cleaner, it's re-elevated to the top of our structure, might be put into storage, re-elevated onto a rail car, shipped by rail, then it's transloaded into shipping containers, then those shipping containers need to be emptied. Every one of those steps has the potential to generate more and more dust because you're handling that product, you're physically touching it, and because of its organic nature, it'll just continue to break down a bit, and that creates dust. So these are the cull return lines. So after the millet goes across the cleaner, anything that's shaken out of it, the smalls, larges, the dust, everything, it's blown up these lines, goes through those center cyclones, and then it's dropped into our cull bin until someone comes and pulls it off. The leg behind here, this is where the cleaned millet comes up in those buckets that we saw earlier. It is then thrown across there, it falls in that distributor, and that's where we can then put it into a storage bin for long-term storage or drop it direct onto the rail car. And so one thing about doing business with CHS is the millet that we have here in process, it isn't just brought to us by some customer. These are our owners. As a cooperative, our farmers own us, but it goes a lot further and deeper than that. We help our owners from the very beginning. In the winter months when there's nothing growing on the land, we can go out and sample their soils to find out what nutrients are in there available for the next year. We will then help them come up with a plan for growing their millet. So when that millet goes into the ground, we know what the soil conditions are, we know what nutrients are needed to grow that crop. Throughout the year, our sales agronomists and technical agronomists will go out and pay visits to the farmer. They'll walk those fields with those farmers, make sure that the crop is maturing correctly, so that when the time for harvest comes in the grain, we know it's in the maximum quality and condition to come into the elevator. We follow the millet crop from before it's even put into the ground until it's loaded onto our rail cars to go to the export. We know the story the whole way along the way. And beyond that, these farmers, our owners, they're in our communities. These are very small towns that we operate in, not large cities. We have close personal connections and relationships with our growers that enhance our ability to bring this quality seed and product to market. So after the millet comes out of the cleaner, as I mentioned before, it can go into long-term storage or go direct on a rail car. And that's what you see right here. This spout will pull rail cars into here. That spout will fold down, and that's how we'll be able to load the rail car into rail cars, and then they'll head out to the export market. One of the unique things about us and the way we handle our millet process, our millet here, is it's not brought to us from a long distance or shipped in here for us to clean. The millet that we handle is grown on these fields that you can see right behind me. As a cooperative, our owners are out here farming this ground every year, and they harvest their millet, and it's just a matter of minutes until it comes to our facility and is run through our equipment. Our farmer owners are very proud of the job that they do raising their millet. Their families have been raising millet here for many generations. They're very proud of the quality that goes into their product, and they're very proud of where it came from. It didn't come from just anywhere. It came from Colorado. This is high quality millet our folks are very proud of, and we're very happy that we can help them handle it and get it into the market to go all over the world to their customers.